Welcome to the Sleep2Dream Analytics explainer video, where better sleep starts with better understanding.
Have you ever had that deep, unshakable jet lag? Or maybe you've wondered why you're a total morning person, but your best friend can't function before noon. Well, it's not just a habit, it's biology. Deep inside all of us, there's a master clock ticking away, and it controls almost everything we do. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see exactly how scientists listen in on that hidden clock. Okay, let's start with a thought experiment. Imagine you're in a room, deep underground. No clocks, no windows, no sunlight. You have absolutely no idea if it's day or night. How would your body know when to get sleepy or when to wake up? This is the exact problem that chronobiologists, the scientists who study our internal rhythms, have been trying to solve for decades.
Because, and this is the amazing part, that master clock is ticking inside of you, right now. It doesn't actually need the sun to keep time, at least not for a little while. And this is the story of the incredible and, let's be honest, sometimes really bizarre experiments that scientists have designed just to hear that clock tick.
And here it is, the culprit. A tiny, tiny little spot in your brain called the Suprachiasmatic Nucleus, or just SCN for short. Now, the name sounds super complicated, but it's really just describing where it is, right above the spot where your optic nerves cross. And that's no accident. It's the perfect place to get information about light. You can think of the SCN as the conductor of this huge biological orchestra, telling every single cell in your body, from your heart to your liver, when to play its part.
So, to really understand how scientists eavesdrop on the SCN, we kind of need to learn its language first. There are a few key terms, a secret vocabulary if you will, that are absolutely essential to cracking the code of our internal clocks.
First up is a term called tau. This is your clock's natural internal rhythm when it's just left alone to do its own thing, like when you're in that underground bunker. And here is the truly wild part. Your internal day isn't 24 hours long. It's actually a little bit longer, on average around 24.18 hours. I mean, think about that. Without the sun, every single one of us would slowly drift out of sync with the rest of the world.
Next up, we have phase. And phase is all about timing. It's about how your internal clock lines up with the outside world. Are you an early bird? That means your clock is phase advanced, you wake up super early. Or are you a night owl, which means you're phase delayed and you'd much rather sleep in? Phase just tells us how your rhythm compares to the 24-hour day we all live on.
So if our natural clock runs a little bit long, what pulls it back into line every single day? Well, that's where Zeitgebers come in. It's a fantastic German word that literally means time givers. And light is by far the most powerful Zeitgeber we have. But other things, like when you eat your meals or when you exercise, also act as little cues that help nudge that slightly longer than 24-hour clock back to a perfect 24 hours day in and day out.
And this brings us to a really important distinction. There's a huge difference between truly syncing your clock, which we call entrainment, and just sort of covering up its signal, which is called masking. Entrainment is a real biological reset. You know, when sunlight hits your eyes in the morning, it's literally turning the gears inside your SCN. Masking, though, that's just faking it. Think about your alarm clock. It can blast you out of bed for sure, but it hasn't actually convinced your internal clock that it's time to be awake. Your body is still screaming, it's the middle of the night.
Okay, so understanding all these concepts, well, it required scientists to get a little creative. To really hear the faint tick-tock of our internal clock, they had to somehow get rid of all the outside noise. And that led to some of the most extreme and frankly fascinating experiments in the history of human research.
The first attempts were pretty much exactly what we were talking about earlier, time isolation studies. Scientists literally put volunteers in underground bunkers or even caves for weeks at a time. No clocks, no sunlight, nothing. They just let them eat, sleep, and wake up whenever their bodies felt like it. And it was in these very studies that they first confirmed our internal day, our tau, is consistently a little bit longer than 24 hours. And these isolation experiments revealed some really strange things. For example, they found that often the moment you feel the most awake and alert is right before your natural bedtime. How weird is that? They call it the sleep forbidden zone. It's like one final push of wakefulness from your body clock right before it finally lets you go to sleep.
But you know, even in total isolation, a person's own habits, like when they chose to sleep, could still mask the true rhythm of their underlying clock. So scientists had to go a step further. They developed something called the forced desynchrony protocol. The whole idea was to completely break the connection between the body's internal clock and the person's sleep schedule.
So how do you do that? Well, you put someone on a schedule that is physically impossible for their body to adapt to. For instance, a 28-hour day.
Subjects would live in a lab where the lights were on for about 19 hours and off for about 9. Their internal clock, their SCN, with its stubborn 24-hour-ish rhythm, just can't keep up. It becomes totally unsynced, which allows the scientist to see its pure, independent rhythm, separate from everything else.
But for the absolute purest measurement possible, researchers came up with the gold standard, the constant routine protocol. This thing is designed to eliminate every single possible factor that could influence or mask the clock's signal. It's the ultimate test.
And let me tell you, it is grueling. Subjects have to stay awake, lying down in a slightly propped-up position for 24 to 48 hours straight. They're kept in constant, very dim light. And to prevent their metabolism from creating its own rhythms, they don't get meals. Instead, they get tiny, identical snacks every single hour. And of course, no sleep is allowed. At all. It's basically the scientific equivalent of putting your ear directly on the SCN to hear it loud and clear.
The good news is, we don't all have to go live in a cave or stay up for 2 days straight just to get a reading on our internal clock anymore. Science has come up with much easier, less invasive tools that have brought chronobiology out of these extreme labs and into the real world, sometimes even right onto our wrists.
So today's toolkit for a clock detective includes things like simple saliva tests that measure your hormones, watch-like devices that can track your activity and rest for weeks, and even fancy methods that analyze your clock genes from a single blood sample.
One of the most common techniques is measuring melatonin. You've probably heard of it as the hormone of darkness. By taking a few saliva samples in the evening under dim light, a doctor can find the exact moment your brain starts releasing melatonin. We call this the dim light melatonin onset, or DLMO, and it's basically the official start of your biological night. It usually happens about 2 hours before you naturally fall asleep.
Another really powerful tool is actigraphy. You just wear a little device on your wrist, kind of like a fitness tracker, and it measures your movement. Over a few weeks, it paints this incredibly detailed picture of your sleep-wake patterns. And what you're seeing here? This is a textbook example of a healthy, normal rhythm. See how consistent it is during the week, with just a little shift on the weekend? That's what we like to see. But actigraphy is also amazing for spotting disorders. What we're looking at now is a classic advanced rhythm, or an extreme early bird. This person's internal clock is shifted way earlier. They get an overwhelming urge to go to sleep in the early evening, and then they're wide awake before the sun even comes up, every single day.
And here's the complete opposite. This is a delayed rhythm, the classic night owl. You can see how they struggle during the work week to wake up for that 7:30 a.m. alarm, but then look what happens on the weekend. Their body immediately snaps back to its preferred schedule, staying up until almost 4 in the morning and sleeping in past noon. This chart perfectly shows that battle between their internal clock and the demands of a 9-to-5 world.
So we've gone from deep, dark caves to smartwatches on our wrists. What's next? Where does the future of reading, and maybe even writing, our body's time go from here? Well, the research is moving at an absolutely incredible pace.
There are a couple of areas that are just unbelievably cool. First, scientists are starting to think that it's not just the brightness of light that sets our clock, but the color. Specifically, that changing ratio of blue to yellow light at dawn and dusk might be a much more powerful time cue. And then there's optogenetics. This is straight out of science fiction. It's a technique where scientists can use a virus to put light-sensitive proteins into SCN neurons. This lets them literally turn the master clock on or off with a tiny beam of light, instantly resetting an animal's entire sleep-wake cycle.
And all of this brings us to one final, really big thought. For decades, scientists have just been trying to hear this hidden clock inside of us. But now, we're not just listening anymore. We're learning to speak its language, and maybe even to rewrite its code. So as these tools get more and more powerful, the question isn't just how does our clock work, but how will we choose to set it?
Thank you for watching the Sleep to Dream Analytics explainer video. We hope you sleep well and dream easy.